Great. Hello, everyone. You are welcome to today's event. So if you are here for the Address in the Elephant in the Room series, you've definitely come to the right place. My name is Bolu Iola. I'm an ESG consultant with SLR Strategy Impact and Reporting Team, one of the three speakers that will be speaking to you today. I will be introducing the other speakers shortly, so just hang on tight. I don't know if Emma, you would like to share the screen, please?
Yeah, of course.
Great. So before we begin, just a bit of housekeeping as usual. So we have muted everyone to avoid feedback and background noise, but please just feel free to add any questions that you may have. Just put that in the chat and we can answer them as we go along. We'll also have 10 minutes for Q&A towards the end, and we can answer all questions then. So, but during the Q&A, just feel free to unmute yourselves if you'd like to. You can talk freely or type your questions in the chat. This is really an open space, and we very much encourage audience participation today. The aim of this Elephant in the Room series is really to create an open space for everyone where we can discuss the challenges faced by corporate foundations. So this is the fourth session of the series, and the previous sessions we've looked at employee engagement, we've looked at funding models, we've also looked at impact measurement as well. But our focus today is on partnership selection, and in a few minutes we'll be having a fireside chat with Amanda, whom I'll be introducing shortly. We're really looking forward to learning from Amanda today. And before I pass to Emma, who, as a reminder, this series is developed by B4SI and SLR. And for those who do not know, B4SI is a member-led global network, which is made up of hundreds of businesses and who all share a common standard in managing, measuring, and reporting their social impact. And SLR is a specialist consultancy that's been working in the field of responsible and sustainable business for more than 25 years. So right now, I will pass on to Emma, the senior researcher at B4SI.
Thank you, Bolu. It's a pleasure to be here with Amanda today. We will introduce Amanda shortly, but firstly, just to go over the agenda for today. So we'll be having a fireside chat with Amanda to talk all things partnership selection. And then afterwards, there'll also be a Q&A for you to ask any questions that you might have. But before we delve into the topic of partnership selection, we are keen to do a quick survey to get a sense of sort of what you understand by partnerships, and if there's any common words that your organizations use to describe partnerships. So you can see on screen that there is a Slido. So if you scan the QR code or go to slido.com and type in the number, it should come up. And the first poll is, how would you describe the organizations that you support? Do you refer to partnerships as grantees, funding partners, or beneficiaries? Just wait a minute or so for people to put in their answers. Thank you. So I can see that the majority of you refer to partnerships as funding partners, or just some more. About a third of you for grantees, and currently none for beneficiaries, which is really interesting. So thank you for that. And then we also have another one, which is, what challenges do you face when it comes to partnership selection? So again, if you could just put some answers, that would be great. So I can see a couple answers: awareness, capacity building, finding the right one, yeah, vetting, decisions, due diligence. Yeah, so a lot of these are going to be covered in the session today with Amanda. Effectiveness, impact. Yeah, so that's great. So hopefully, yeah, this session will really help you overcome those challenges. Oh, a couple more: access, budgets, locally led. Brilliant. So thank you so much for those answers. Really great to get insight from you. And yeah, like I said, hopefully this session will provide some insights into some of those challenges, and we can also explore them at the end with the Q&A as well. So now I'm going to introduce Amanda. So Amanda Jordan started her career in the NGO sector before moving in-house, where she became the first CSR Director of an FTSE 100 company, and started the global standard for measuring corporate community impact, formerly LBG, but is now known as B4SI. She is a former chair of the Association of Charitable Foundations, and a founder of Step Up to Serve. She is currently a chair on the trustee board of the Virgin Money Foundation, and she has a wealth of experience working with corporate foundations and in particular partnership selection as well as strategy development. So welcome, Amanda. We're very excited to hear about your experiences in partnership selection. And Bolo, did you want to ask Amanda the first question?
Yeah, great. Thank you for that, Emma. And I was just, looking back at the challenges people described, and one of them was, finding the right one. And one of my first questions to you, Amanda, is what do you think are the essential criteria or factors that corporate foundations should take into consideration when choosing partners for their initiatives?
Well, can I just say, first of all, how good it is to be here. And as I see people entering the room and who have already entered the room, I see a lot of familiar names. So just a big hello to everyone. Please, as Bolu said, do feel free to ask questions. We want this to be useful to you. And the purpose of what we just went through was partly to remind ourselves that actually there are all different kinds of partners. Sometimes as a corporate foundation, you might be running a program where you want to support a variety of different organizations who will help to achieve your objectives. Other times you're looking for more of what I might call a delivery partner, where you're going to work together to set objectives to achieve. They are slightly different, but they're both partnerships, and they do imply, of course, a level both sides are making a contribution, and that raises all sorts of issues for you as a corporate foundation. So in terms of criteria, I think the very first thing you would be thinking about, it starts with you. What are you trying to achieve? Because that must be one of your basic criteria for looking for your partner. Are they trying to achieve the same thing? I know it sounds very simplistic, but I think it's easy to forget that actually what you want is not somebody who wants to be funding led, but has a genuine shared objective. So that has to be number one. I think number two, an ability to deliver. And this is where the corporate foundation often has more power, which you're not always very aware of, and has often, in my experience, unrealistic expectations. So the whole issue of capacity building, which some of you may well come into play, can they deliver on their own? Do they need some kind of help? And it might be additional trustees, it might be volunteer help. But the other very basic thing is not what I'd call vetting, but more of an assessment of the potential partner. So the track record, do they have other funders? Do they work with other corporates or other corporate funders? What is their funding track record? And then another issue, which I think is very often forgotten, but should absolutely be key in my experience, and I've been a funder in many different capacities over the years, is governance, good governance. How many people on their trustee board? How often do they meet? Are they ensuring that they're meeting all the obligations that they should be under legislation? These things should all be explored, in my view, before you go much further. And governance can be key, believe me. There are some organisations for whom governance is not always a priority. And I think it's very important that it is for you as a partner, as a funding partner. So hopefully that's just highlighted some of the what I would call key criteria.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. That's really good to know, knowing that you have to know what you as a corporate foundation wants and ensuring that you share genuine objective with the proposed partner. But that's really helpful. Thank you, Amanda. And on to my second question. Based on your experience, what would you say are some typical errors or pitfalls that corporate foundations encounter during the partner selection process? What would you say those pitfalls or errors are?
Well, I think leading on from what I just said, not investing the time in making that partnership selection. I think that's quite common. If you have colleagues in your corporate funder, they wouldn't be launching a new product or a new service without doing a lot of research in advance. And you should, in my view, be doing something similar. So you do need to invest the time, and very often that isn't recognised. It isn't good enough to be a worthwhile organisation, because in the not-for-profit sector, there are so many organisations who are doing fantastic work, but that doesn't necessarily mean to say they're going to be the right partner for you and what you're trying to achieve. So not putting in the time to do the research. I think the other thing is, and I wouldn't want to stress too strongly the issue of capacity, because I think it is possible to help to build capacity, and therefore it is possible for you to take some risks and look beyond the well-known brands that exist in the not-for-profit world. Over the years I can remember advising, back in my days of corporate citizenship, a client who had a major program they were wanting to deliver in fact in Africa, and suggesting one or two organisations that I had had experience of, but who were not particularly well known. And they said, oh, well, we need to stick to the well-known brands. And actually, that isn't always the case. So be brave. As a corporate foundation, you can take risks. And so be brave. And just remember to do your proper assessments. And then finally, I think the other pitfall is not monitoring. So it's not good enough to set up the partnership, off goes the money. You need to monitor, stay in touch, build the relationship, and really understand what is happening. And to give it time to work.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's really nice to hear about, not investing time, just starting with your first point of not investing investing time in the partnership process, right? A lot of these things, as do a lot of many other things, takes time to mature, to grow, to get to, so not investing that time is one of the key takeaways from me on that point. And also, to my last question, I know we touched about in the first question that I asked around how you have to ensure that there is genuine shared objectives. How do you ensure potential partners align with company values? And I think it's like an add-on question is there's been a lot of talk around leveraging total assets. So how can one also leverage the total assets that the company can offer?
Yes, I think alignment of values is obviously important, and that comes from shared objectives.
Yes.
But in my view, there is only really one way of ensuring that you can be confident about that, and that is by actually building that relationship, because then and if possible, actually meeting face to face, and understanding the organization and the people you're dealing with. Very often, particularly in the not-for-profit sector, and particularly if you are going to go for smaller organizations, support develop partnerships with smaller organizations, you are basically talking about key individuals who will be so important to that organization. Another thing to understand, that when that person moves on, is the organization, because the governance is good, going to be able to sustain the partnership. But it is very important to get to know them, and I think that's the best way of really ensuring that you've got those shared values. And also, what's their attitude to working with a corporate foundation? I mean, many not-for-profits, most not-for-profits, keen, of course, to get funding, keen to be associated with a brand, your corporate brand, if you carry it with your foundation. But what does that really mean? Have they got problems? Some not-for-profits are very wary of working with, or their own supporters may be wary of them aligning themselves with a brand they don't necessarily respect. So these are some of the pitfalls. So I think getting to know people and talking to them is very important. And another way of getting to know them is by building, really ensuring that you are offering more than just money. And that you can offer the assets of your organisation. And I very often say to people, having chaired a private foundation, extremely good and effective one, that the difference between a corporate foundation and a private foundation is very often the additional leverage that a corporate foundation can bring to a partnership. And it is very important, and that's mostly in either intellectual capacity or just, basic volunteer, basic skills, or sort of muscle, extra hands, but also introducing them to others. So I think there are a lot of assets that you can and should be offering.
That's really helpful to know, and thank you so much. So I don't want to be the only one asking all the questions, so I'm going to pass it down to Emma so she can ask her own questions. Go ahead, Emma.
Thank you, Bolo. And as a member of B4SI, I would love to know how you think that the B4SI model could lend itself into the success of partnerships.
Yeah, well, I think, firstly, we should start with the importance of measurement. And I think, I cannot stress too strongly how important it is that you measure, you set objectives, and you measure both your inputs, your outputs, and then your long-term impact. And I think you do that not so you can tick a box and say, we've done that. Yes, we've got our impact measurement in place. But because it's about learning. How do you know and how can you improve unless you really monitor and measure the success or otherwise, because there's nothing wrong with failure. But you need to have some sort of measurement in place to be able to learn. You also need to be able to tell your story. And I think what measurement can do is to really enhance the story you can tell by giving real evidence of achievements, both in terms of numbers engaged, long-term impacts. That's where your stories come from. That's where you can engage your stakeholders by telling your story. So absolutely crucial that you do measure. And in my view, if you're going to measure, B4SI is the measurement framework to use. And I say that not just because I helped to set up LBG originally, which was the forerunner, but because over the years, there have been a number of corporate foundations who've been in membership of B4SI. And I think B4SI understands this territory. And it's also recognised, in my experience, B4SI is recognised in the not-for-profit sector as well as in the corporate sector. And it has become the international standard. So in my view, it's the one to use, certainly.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it, really helps companies tell their story nicely. And then just moving on, so with the increasing prevalence of sort of digital platforms and technology, how do you think this will how do you anticipate the evolution of partnership selection in the future because of these, I guess?
Well, I mean, it has already changed, and it will change and continue to change, and quite rightly. I think not only does are you now able to be able to reach a much wider range of organisations by using various platforms. So in terms of your search and research, you certainly can reach out to far more organisations, but crucially in delivery as well. And I know that a number of companies and a number of corporate foundations, in terms of improving their reach, want to be able to use digital platforms and working with organisations who use digital platforms. So I think it is beginning or has begun to really change the partnership landscape, and I think it will continue to do so. And I think, you know, positively, we've obviously always got to be aware of the pitfalls, but I think it will mean broader reach, full stop. However, it should not replace all the things that we talked about, the importance of face-to-face, building a relationship. All of those things, I think, will continue to be important and should be in terms of partnerships. So, you know, I would just be wary of going too far down that route and forgetting that actually what you're dealing with are people, and you need to know them and understand them, whatever medium they may be using in their work or in terms of talking to you.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Sort of they can have a positive effect, but it's also, like you said, it's about people and understanding what they do as well. So thank you, Amanda, for those insights. Those are all the questions that me and Bolu had planned, but now we'd like to open the floor for anyone else to ask any questions they might have.
Yeah, and just like we mentioned earlier, feel free to unmute yourselves, and we'll be happy to see your lovely faces. So yes, just feel free to drop in the chat any questions you might have, and also feel free to unmute yourselves.
I did want to just add, actually, about the fact that this is termed elephant in the room. My own experience is that yes, of course, be wary of the elephant, but I love them too. And actually, in my experience, partnership selection is the fun bit. So, you know, I think there are so many opportunities out there, but always be very open with people. If you're not necessarily going to select them eventually or whatever, you have a process, just be open about it. And I've also been involved as a funder in helping to cover costs for those who might be coming to pitch to you or to talk to you. You know, don't be afraid to reach out to more than one partner, is what I'm saying, but be open about that process. I know we've got a few questions now, sorry, that have just come in.
Yeah.
Yes, we have 3 questions coming in already. And I think the first one says, how do you balance this advice with small grants under 10K?
With small grants under 10K, well, firstly, thank God for small grants under 10K, because so many organisations rely upon them. So please don't feel that what you have to do is big mega partnerships, because that is not, in my view, what is necessarily most useful. However, with small grants under 10K, you still need to ensure that there are shared objectives, but inevitably you don't want to bog the process down of spending your time, their time, and time is money, for a grant of £2,000, £3,000, but just be clear and open about what it is you're trying to achieve so that they understand that. So some of the principles still apply, but just the process, I think, is much, much lighter. And in my experience as well, small grants programs are very good to run alongside a larger grants program, because it gives you an opportunity to, put down some wider routes. Often, if you are closely linked with your corporate funder, often small grants can be run through staff as well. Staff who might be involved might be the ones who want for their organisation to get these small grants. So I'm a fan, as you probably gathered.
Yeah, we've got another question, Amanda. What approaches do you suggest for evaluating the credibility and impact of potential partners?
Well, I mean, I know it sounds very trite to keep saying openness, but I think be very clear with them what it is that you are looking for, and be clear that you expect that in return. It is very hard. When I very first became a funder many, many years ago, I can remember an experienced funder saying to me, always remember, it isn't your money. And, I know you're all aware of that. This isn't your money. You are tasked with reaching out with money which has been earned, through hard work by somebody else. You are simply a steward in a sense. So you have a responsibility, but it isn't your money. So you need to be clear with people that actually you are there really to ensure it's well spent. So openness, clear about what you're trying to achieve, discussion with them about what they think some of the pitfalls might be, whether they might need any help. Don't be, try and get over that inevitable power imbalance.
Thank you, Amanda.
Okay.
So we still have lots of questions rolling in, so I'm going to try and get through them as much as we can.
I'll be briefer.
And the next one says, you talked about good partnerships. What would be your definitions or indicators of a good partnership?
That if you put, a bit like Mr. and Mrs., put them in 2 different rooms and ask what you're trying to achieve. And if you both say the same things, that's a good partnership.
Love that. And the next one says, we would love to hear more about your experience of offering wider assets of the foundation to partners.
Yeah, I mean, I think the wider assets come, in my experience, as I said earlier, very much from your corporate funder, if I can call your corporate funder that, sponsor, whatever. And I know relationships vary hugely. Some are close relationships, some aren't. But in my experience, whoever is providing the money, whatever the company may be, it's full of people who do actually want to and would love the opportunity to get involved. So I think it's about exploring what those opportunities might be, what's needed. So it might be volunteering, it might be trustees. My God, most voluntary organisations do need trustees. Trustees often with specific skills, but obviously trustees who are going to be committed and take it seriously. So don't forget the governance piece at all, and the contribution that volunteers from your corporate sponsor can give. And it's also down to very basic things like, well, we used to say things like photocopying, but nobody does that nowadays. Quite right too. But, you know, just providing rooms and access, or helping with an event, or helping with very specific advice and skills. Some of the research that I've been involved in the past has found that some skills, like not just the finance skills, but communication, you know, PR, communication skills, those sorts of things that you can match from your company to whoever your partner is.
And we have this particular question which has been liked by about 2 more people. So it says, once you have decided what type of charity you want to support, I mean, that is a particular area of work, how do you go about finding charities?
If you find, well, you can Google. You can get somebody else to do it for you. I mean, as I say, it depends partly on what your level of resource is, but don't be afraid to invest time in it. It is not time wasted. And I do know from experience that there sometimes corporate foundations have trustees who want to be able to get on with it and don't understand the importance of actually taking time to get the selection right. But you have to educate them and remind them that actually, in terms of their day jobs, they wouldn't just invest money without ensuring that it was being well done. So, you know, all the usual ways, or you know, there are umbrella organisations that you can go to who will help you and give you some advice. You know, like community service volunteers, for instance, in a local area, who might be worth contacting them and saying, who are the ones in this particular area, if you're thinking of doing something local or regional. So community service volunteers, or CVSs, or, you know, CSVs, a lot of umbrella organisations who can help you with some advice, or you can get it done professionally. I get consultancy to do it for you, which gives you an objective view, which is a good thing to do.
Right. And this following question is like the back end of it. And this question says, what's the best way for charities to engage with corporates, particularly smaller charities who don't have big public profiles?
Yeah, it's oh my God, this question, I've been in so many seminars over the years when people have asked that, how do we get to the corporates? And I think what you need to do is firstly make sure your own communicate. How's your website doing? You know, I know even for a small organization, it's important to ensure that you are getting your message out there, so that when funders do come looking, you're going to be seen. Make sure you network. Yes, approach corporates, but increasingly corporate foundations, I mean, look out who is a potential good funder for you. Look at their website. How do they run their programs? Are they open programs? Are they closed? Just build your own knowledge. It sounds like a lot of work, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be, but just take it seriously.
Yeah. And then the next question is, do you have any examples or thoughts on how foundations can best weave the work of the foundation into the DNA of the corporate, giving them a sense of pride in their work?
Another very common question. I mean, one of the things I learned to say when I chaired the Association of Charitable Foundations, that they always say, is meet one foundation, you meet one foundation. They are all different, and that is certainly true in the corporate foundation sector. So the relationship you have with your corporate is key to this. I have always been on the side of the debate which says, see your corporate funder as a key stakeholder. Many corporate foundations, particularly those who may have a strong level of operational independence, want nothing to do with their corporate. And in my view, that is not necessarily the right approach. I think it's important to build a strong relationship with your corporate funder. Ideally, that there is, and normally there is some link at trustee level, and make sure that link works, that your trustees, your corporate trustees, are playing an active part in the foundation and take the message back as well. Help you with introductions to the key people in the company. Make sure you talk to the HR team, because staff, you know, to build pride, the HR team, in my view, they can be really important to this, and understanding how important this work can be for building pride. Communications teams as well. But the best way, in my experience of doing it, is to have champions throughout the, you know, there probably are champions throughout the company. And maybe it's an in-house program that they're championing, but there will be people who've already been identified as the people interested in this work, and try and make sure that they understand your work as well and can help to spread the message. It's a difficult one to give an answer to because everybody's different, but make sure you respect that relationship, in my view.
Thanks, Amanda. And then we've got another question. Do you have recommendations for achieving a level of synergy across global projects to align on shared KPIs or a shared KPI?
Well, you know, probably the most effective partnership I ever was involved in was many years ago. And we actually ran a workshop which went on over 2 days to get, I mean, it was a large partnership, to be able to draw up shared KPIs. And we made sure we had 3 key KPIs for both. So for not-for-profit partner, for corporate partner, and then 3 for the whole thing. So, and they were agreed and signed off by everybody. Now, not everybody's going to spend 2 days, I know that. And sometimes globally, there are challenges to do with capacity, occasionally culture. I mean, I have been involved obviously in global initiatives as well, and there are additional challenges. But again, I think there's no substitute for spending the time trying to make sure that you have actually agreed those KPIs and keep them as simple as possible.
Yeah. And then the next question is, how can you tell a holistic story across multiple impact areas, particularly when grant recipients measure different outcomes, e.g. meals served, children supported, etc.?
Well, it's about long-term impacts. So, you know, it is about what difference do those number of meals to those number of children make? What is the longer-term impact of that, apart from happy kids, we hope, in the shorter term? What is the long-term impact? What is the contribution to the health of society generally? And that's where you can draw upon additional research as well, which talks about the importance of good nutrition in children. So make sure you're telling your story well, you're linking it to key public policy issues, not overclaiming, but certainly being clear that that's your long-term aim, is to ensure that you are making that contribution to the health of society generally.
Yeah, that's great. And then the next question is, what is your view on what the right type and number of partnerships you could have in place? For example, in one extreme, you could support a large international charity, but that is not necessarily very engaging locally. On the other extreme, you could support lots of smaller charities, but then lose focus. For me, there is a sweet spot, the right balance of partnerships to open up opportunities and then maximize social impact using B4SI.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. And leaving aside the small grants, which you can run, I think, in terms of larger numbers, but as a sort of holistic program, as a separate program, I often say the number is how many do you feel you can manage? I know it's a very sort of simple answer to it, but don't take on more than you are able to manage. And when I say manage, I mean be aware of what they're doing, being able to monitor it, keep in regular contact, monitor what happens at the other end, make sure all of those things are important. Don't take on too much. I hope that answers the question or helps to answer the question.
Thank you, Amanda. So we have just about 3 questions left, before we have to wrap it up. And I'll start with one that says, do you have a view between national approach on one topic versus focused work on one location? That's the place-based approach.
Yeah.
And then there was I think there's an example of climate change adaptation into grants, both to help the charity, but also in what the foundation should be doing in this space.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I take the place-based approach first, I mean, over the years, I've obviously changed my mind or developed my thinking or moved with the times or whatever. And I am one of those funders who have come to a point of realizing that actually place-based funding can be extremely effective. And I should declare an interest here because Virgin Money Foundation is a place-based funder in the northeast of England and Glasgow. And we find that, and those we are working with find that to be a really helpful approach to build our knowledge and to really be effective at longer term achievements. Now, I became more attracted to place-based funding where for many years, when still am involved with the National Literacy Trust, which is a marvellous organisation, by the way, everyone. But I chaired the board for a number of years and we did, and they still run a number of big national initiatives, but realised that actually what they were doing wasn't necessarily trickling down and they weren't able to monitor as much as they might have liked. And they developed a place-based approach to their work some 10, 15 years ago, which has been hugely effective at moving literacy rates in certain deprived areas. And that was one of my experiences, which has helped me to that place, which is the place-based approach. Having said that, that doesn't mean to say that national initiatives are not worth doing, because of course they are. But if I think you have an opportunity because you have a particular link to a geography, or there's a particular reason why you may want to hone in, place-based funding, I think, is certainly worth exploring. And what it also does is give you a very good opportunity to build broader partnerships with other funders. I think it somehow helps to diffuse what's often seen as competition. And when you know you have a shared objective of improving literacy rates in a particular area or helping deprived communities in the northeast, working with others, sharing knowledge becomes somehow, well, I mean, it should be easy at all levels, but it certainly is a place-based level.
Great.
And climate change?
Yes.
Thank God somebody mentioned climate change, quite right too. I would love to think, it's not true of course, but I'd love to think that by now climate change would be an integral part of our thinking, which is really what it should be. So it should be an important part of everything you do. What are the implications for climate change of whatever partnership it is that you are doing? Sadly, in my experience, and I'm sure I'm guilty of this as well, it isn't always front of mind. But climate change programs, I mean, there's an environmental foundation movement, and of which I think some corporate foundations are part. And there are corporate foundations who are doing work in the climate change area. It's worth looking to see what they're doing if you want to do something specific. But as a general rule, it should be part of your approach, part of your thinking.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. So I'm just going to take 2 more questions left, even though we still have a few more coming in.
Yeah.
So I would say the next question is, can you talk some more about the additional challenges that comes with global partnerships?
Well, I mean, I think they're the obvious ones, really, which are that it is harder, of course, to do face-to-face work, or can be. But you often, if your company who fund the foundation is global, then you will have people in the local area or in the particular country or territory who can help you to build the relationships. And so I think, use the company if you possibly can. I know from having funded a lot in sub-Saharan Africa, when we were doing final selections with private foundation, we used to fund people to actually come to the UK and fund through a UK-based partnership organisation, but fund the organisation to come to the UK. A lot of that thinking is now seen to be out of date, because a lot of foundations who are active in this area prefer to fund direct. And I can see absolutely the reasons why, and I would certainly support that movement. But just be aware of the natural difficulties and call upon the resources that you might have to learn as much as you can about what's happening. And there are a lot of organisations, global organisations, who can help you as well.
Thank you, Amanda. So our final questions, which we only have time for today, would be, I would love to hear how you have balanced maintaining long-term partnerships with exploring new partners or programs. That is, long-term partnerships may not be going well, but should the opportunity be provided to new organizations also, especially when the budgets are limited?
Yeah, well, exactly. And I mean, it's difficult because we all want to be able to do as much as we can. But I think it comes back to setting objectives, and what I should have said and have forgotten, with a clear time on that. So a partnership over 2 years, 3 years, often in global funding, it's 5 years. But being clear that there will be an end point, and making sure the monitoring and keeping in contact so they understand it's coming to an end. So you are, if you want to, able to move on, or perhaps to continue with a new program with that particular partner. But the other thing is to keep a small amount of money back to do some new and innovative things. So, new partnerships. Not necessarily new organisations, although nothing wrong with new organisations, but sometimes people like shiny new and forget tried and tested. But so perhaps you can run parallel programmes.
Thank you, Amanda, so much. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I know we are a bit over time, but I want to apologize for that. But a special thank you to Amanda for sharing your depth.
That's
and
all
knowledge.
right. I did have one more thing I wanted to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
And this is partly, apart from repeating everything I've already said about making sure you invest time, go beyond the norm, go out, all of these things. But I wanted to say something that Nancy Doyle Hall, who's our brilliant executive director at the Virgin Money Foundation, said to me: give it time, allow the partnership to go through the form, the storm, the norm, and perform the journey. And I think that's absolutely right. Give it time.
That's a better way to close than that. Keep it up. Just to let everyone know, we will be releasing a recap of the session in form of a blog within the next coming week. So stay tuned for that. We'll recap everything that we've discussed today. And the blog for our last events are also online on the B4SI, website, and also the SLR website. And looking further ahead, we're pleased to announce our next event in the series, and then we will be looking at corporate foundations alignment with parents' companies' purpose and strategy. And this is just coming, it's better. It couldn't be any better timing, following up from Amanda's conversations today. And this will be happening on the 5th of June, and we'll be joined by Kate Ashworth from Societe Generale UK. And as we mentioned, please do reach out to us if you'd like to be featured in the upcoming events addressing other elephants in the room. But that's all from us today. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks very much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.